Having grown up in the church and going to church every Sunday for most of my life has its blessings and its curses. Now that I've been out of it for 15 years or so, I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Welcome back to Sassy Southern Grandma. I'm Cindy. Glad to have you back with us. And this week, I've been thinking a lot about my life in the church and what I miss and what I don't miss. I've talked here many times about the fact that I was raised in a very small rural community in North Carolina, and that the bulk of the entire culture there is Baptist and very fundamental, very strict Baptist that infiltrated pretty much our whole life. Our whole life was built around the church and being there every time the doors are open. First, what do I miss? Probably the thing I miss the most is the choir, singing in the choir. I love singing in the choir. I sang in small groups. I sang in the choir. I sang solos. I sang in trios. Loved doing Christmas music. Loved doing any kind of special presentation that we did at church. And I really miss that. I haven't figured out quite yet how to get that back into my life outside the church, but I still sing in the car. Just still kind of going through trying to figure out what that looks like, especially living full-time on the road, being a travel nurse. I can't really get involved much in a community thing. I'm only, most places, 3 months to 6 months. I guess I could if I was there 6 months. I could stay and work through a season of a community choir or something. So that's something I'm going to look a little bit more into. Another thing I miss, probably just as much as choir, and choir was part of this, is community. Having a group of people that I felt like I belonged to. People that knew me, people that knew my kids, people that pretty much knew my life situation, knew, unfortunately, pretty much everything about me, my public life anyway. I liked having those people around. I liked, most of them were sincere, genuine people. Most of them were the people that I found not to be sincere and genuine. I kind of avoided, but sometimes you can't. I enjoyed especially the outside the church service type things where we did women's retreats and we did potlucks and we did, picnic afternoons and things like that that were more community centered than worship and Bible study and that kind of thing. I did enjoy women's Bible studies because we really, in smaller groups like that, were able to get more real with each other. I really enjoyed women's retreats for that purpose because we would go on women's retreats, go somewhere a couple of hours away, sometimes further. A lot of us women would get together, go to these things, and we'd have structured times of worship and Bible study and things that were planned, but there was always free time. And during that free time, in the evenings after everything was over, and we were able to sit and fellowship is the word. We were able to sit and talk and really, I think people got more real during those times than we did any other time. So I really enjoyed those trips. Another thing I've thought about a lot while I've been doing my deconstruction, reconstruction of spirituality is the word certainty. I grew up in such a rigid system of rules that it kind of gives you a little security around certainty. Now I wonder if it really was security. Now I wonder if it was the safety that I thought it was, because it wasn't true. It's not true to what I know now. And everything that I was taught as fact, truth with a capital T, and the only fact and truth. So having grown up in that and as an adult still being involved in that paradigm of what you're learning, what we're telling you, what you're reading, everything is certainty. It's kind of a two-edged sword, because it gives you a little bit of security in that, okay, I know what I know and I know what I believe and I know that this is the truth. This is what I've been told. But now being outside of it, it can get a little iffy when you're thinking, okay, all the things I thought were certain are not certain. In a way that's scary. In a way, it's freedom. It's given me the freedom to explore other ideas. It's given me the freedom to realize that there's a whole world out there outside that structure that doesn't feel that that's the certainty of life. And it kind of unmoors your foundations a little bit, but it also gives you freedom to explore and freedom to find out and explore yourself of what do you really believe. And I think I'll probably be on that journey for the rest of my life of of what do I really believe to be true. Because a lot of times you put your stake in something and say, this is what I believe, and then you find out that it was not at all what you thought it was. Now to what I don't miss. What I don't miss about being in church. I don't miss all the rules. And a lot of the rules were kind of understood. Some of them, especially as a child growing up, those rules were very explicitly told to me. What we were allowed to do, what we were not allowed to do, which now looking back, a lot of it was just unfounded in any kind of reality. It was unfounded in any kind of... The whole aura is that you're founding your faith on the Bible, what the Bible says. But there were so many rules that we had that had no foundation in the Bible whatsoever. It was just something that someone made up, that this is the rule, this is the way we do it. And some of them were like minutia of your life, and some of it was very important things. And now that I'm outside of that, it is freeing. It's very freeing. And you know, there's a lot of people that are in a rigid religion that think if I don't have this set of rules, this dogma around me, I'll go crazy. I'll go do things I shouldn't do. I'll do evil things. I'll do mean things to people. One thing the Bible says, out of the heart the man speaks. Out of your heart is where your actions come from. If you're an evil person, you're going to be evil in or outside the church. We found out a lot about evil people in the church recently. Then if you're a good person, if you're a genuinely good person who loves people, who cares about society, who cares about, you know, what goes on in the world, when those rules aren't there, you're still going to be a good person. It's not those rules that are keeping you safe, and in a way of not, oh, I've got these rules, so now I know what not to do. You know what not to do. In your heart, you know what not to do. And you know what to do. And I think that's one of the things that I don't miss, is that everything was what not to do. It's ironic that the denomination I was raised in was Free Will Baptist. There was not any free will that I was aware of. I think it had to do with a belief, a doctrine about we have our free will to choose God or not. But there was no free will whatsoever in anything, because everything was don't do this, don't do that, don't dance, don't listen to rock music, don't smoke, don't drink, don't have sex, don't. Everything was don't. And there was not very much taught in my church, in the Christian school I went to, at home, about what to do. I feel like if there was more emphasis placed on, okay, we don't want you to do these things, but here's what you do. This is how you live out Christ in your life. That would have been a whole different paradigm. Another thing I don't miss is having to show up to everything. I raised my 5 children in their, up till about high school. A couple of them graduated from the Christian school, and I raised them in a somewhat progressive church, especially compared to the one I was raised in North Carolina. We were in Tennessee, and it was a Baptist church that eventually, towards the end of our stay there, became a Southern Baptist church. But it was a more, as churches go, as Baptist churches go, it was a little more progressive. But you were expected to be there. If the doors were open, you were expected to be there. Sunday was Sunday school, church. Go home, eat lunch, maybe take a nap, hang out with friends or something, go back at night for another service. On Wednesday night, there was another service. Then in between there's women's groups, men's groups, children's groups. There's just, you could go to church every day. If you have kids, you could go to church every day because there's something going on that keeps you there. Raising 5 children is enough work without having to always be somewhere, without having to always be involved with something. There may be a women's tea. There may be a service project of some kind that people are doing. But you were expected to be there all the time. And if you weren't, and it wasn't said, it wasn't like you have to be here, you sign a paper that says I'll be at every function. It wasn't that way. It was just understood that you were expected to be there. I remember when I first stopped going to Sunday school every single Sunday, sometimes I would just not go and go to church, or not go at all. If I missed, someone would call me. Someone would say, hey, is everything okay? Are the kids sick? What's going on? And in a way, that's comforting that people care enough to call. But after a while, it got to be, are you taking attendance on when I'm there and when I'm not? And it got a little intrusive, because sometimes there was really no reason not to go other than we just didn't want to. It kind of became a little bit, I don't know, creepy is not the word, but just kind of demanding that you participate in every single thing. And on the flip side of that, is kind of ironic that once I completely stopped going to that church, we had been going there for about 13, 14 years. once I completely stopped going, I never heard from anybody. The pastor never called and said, "What's going on? Are you okay? We're checking up on you. Are you okay? Why did you stop coming?" I completely expected to get a call or a visit, really a visit, from the pastor and his wife to ask what was going on. We stopped. And that was it. That was a little kind of disappointing. I know I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth because I'm like, don't check up on me, but why didn't you check up on me? But when we stopped going completely after being involved in every single thing for that many years, it was a little concerning and a little telling to me. Another thing I do not miss, especially since I've done a lot more reading and studying and adopting a much more progressive thought pattern and a much more liberal, yeah, I said the bad L word, belief system, is looking back now and seeing the infiltration of the patriarchy in the church system. And that's what it's built on. That's the whole entire structure of it. I could do probably a whole video series on that, but just suffice it to say that looking back now, I can see how much women were not allowed to do certain things, and they were only allowed to do certain things. Really looking back, I can see that women did the bulk of the labor in the church. And most people will tell you that if they're honest about church. Women do all of the dinners, all of the cleaning, all of the cleaning up after a dinner, all of the childcare, the nursery, all of the Sunday school teaching, until you get to adults. All of the teachers are women in most churches. So not only are you expected to be there, you're also expected to take some sort of teaching position or some sort of service position in that you are giving back to the church for what the church is supposedly giving you. The men weren't so much expected to do that. Men were leadership. They were deacons. They were elders. They were the pastor. They were the choir director. They were the youth pastor. You get the picture. So that is something that I'm very glad to have broken away from. Very glad to have a husband who is not in any way that way, and able to become the person that I know I am and the person that I'm learning to be without that oppression of this is your place and this is your only place. And the only other thing that has come to mind, the main thing actually that's come to mind while I was thinking about this, was I miss what I thought was friendship. I miss having women who I thought had my back, were my friends, thick and thin. And there were some that were there through thick and thin. I went through a really, really hairy divorce while I was in that church and ended up being a single mother of 5. So these women knew me as a married woman who, she and her husband both served in the church. She and her husband were both known by everybody. Then I went from that to someone whose husband left her with the children. And it was like my whole identity was wrapped up in that. My whole identity was wrapped up in wife, mother, church lady, that sort of thing. You get the picture. So when all that came crumbling down, it not only shook my faith, it not only made me question a lot of things, it made me question people, because I found out that people who were there for me were only there for me to a point. I noticed a line of demarcation when my divorce was final. Once my divorce was final, all the people that I thought were my friends kind of slowly drifted away. They kind of slowly stopped calling. They kind of slowly stopped inviting me to things. I guess I had the scarlet D on my forehead. I was now divorced. I know that part of it was I had several women say to me that when we separated and divorced, it terrified them because they knew my husband to be a godly man, a man who believed all the things they believed and was devoted to his family. And then suddenly he was gone. He made other choices. And it terrified them. I had 2 or 3 women actually say to me, "This scares me because if he can do it, my husband can do it." And I think that's part of the root of why they all kind of drifted away. I also think there's a stigma of divorced women in the church that we're after your man. I am not after anybody's man. The last thing I wanted at that time was another man. I was done. So I had plenty to do with kids. I didn't have any energy or desire or anything. I was trying to grieve my marriage. I was trying to get through that aspect of divorce. So the last thing, and in fact, not even the last thing, it wasn't even on the list to look at somebody else's husband or even any single guys, was not interested. But I kind of got that feeling that, okay, now I might be a threat. Now I might be, us getting divorced would give other guys ideas of, hey, if he can leave, I can leave. I can get out of this too. I don't know. I tend to project what I think other people are thinking on them. So maybe that wasn't it at all. But I do know that those friendships that I thought were solid kind of fell away, especially once the divorce was final. So that was hurtful. But in a way, it was part of my journey. It was part of my learning that I'm no longer that person. I'm no longer the wife. I'm no longer living in that paradigm. And so I had to learn who I am. I had to realize that not long after that, my kids were starting to grow up and move on to their own lives. And as those years went by, I again had to figure out who I was because my life wasn't absorbed in their things. All this to say, good and bad going to church. Now, I don't regret leaving. I don't regret not going to a church because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to be a certain thing, whether you want to be that thing or not. There's a lot of pressure to dress a certain way. Different churches have different dress codes, subliminally. It's not something they write down. Actually, we did go to church in Germany that if you sang or stood in front of the podium for any kind of anything, you had to sign a thing saying about what you would wear and what you wouldn't wear. Yeah, that was for real. But all that to say, I don't regret it. I got some good out of it, but I realize now that a lot of it was not real. A lot of it was surface. A lot of it is this facade that's here, and then underneath here is what's reality with people. And you find that with friends outside the church. You find that with organizations outside the church. So I'm kind of at a place now where I'm wanting that community with other women, but I'm not sure quite how to get it because I don't want to get into another structured situation. I would like to be more in a relaxed situation and have women that are, I say like-minded, but they don't have to think exactly like I think. They don't have to believe exactly like I believe. They can have a different lifestyle. They can have, different things going on in their life, but be a genuine person. So if you have any suggestions, especially if you're someone who has kind of a transient life like we do, or someone who's left one group and been able to form a new friendship circle, hey, I'm open to ideas. And in the meantime, think about the structures of things that you're involved in. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Welcome back now. Here.